All right, guys, what's going on? Needs more drums here. Back in Accelerando for episode 9 of our 12-hour build here. We're in the ninth hour, and this episode is going to be focused on public transit. So before we get started here, I know that we have been kind of MIA for a while. Just a lot been going on um, with work and everything too, and so it's just been difficult to kind of find the time to get behind the computer and sit down and record these episodes. And apologies for that, but we are hopefully back for a bit. I do want to finish the city. I'm really excited to jump back into the game. There was a new patch. The first Ice Flake patch was released, and so you can see already like some of the UI changes are pretty obvious. When I opened up the game, I was pretty surprised by this, and I knew there were a couple things like bigger things like this, and there were some graphical changes as well and things like that. And so far, like, I'm not disappointed. I mean, I like the way it looks. I like some of the new colors. I like how the demand bars are very prominent. And yeah, I still think everything looks pretty good and everything's functioning pretty well. So no complaints here for our first patch. Excited to see what they're doing. It sounds like they're very transparent about game updates and things like that. So it'll be nice to see in the future, what happens since they've kind of taken over the forward development of the game. But anyway, you saw in the beginning there, we just made some quick adjustments. At the end of the last episode, I realized that my power situation was not great. I forgot that I lowered the budget. So there was a massive blackout in the city. So I just raised the budget a little bit, and we're back on track. And then here, just kind of, changing up some of the roads, making sure that the tram tracks are all placed down where I want them to be. And we're going to start adding in some tram stops. So that's the first thing we're going to do today. Like I said, we're focusing on public transit. We're going to do the tram. We're going to do the bus lines. And I think later on, we're even going to add in some taxis. And as you also saw in the beginning, we connected our ship lines. I realized that I forgot to connect the passenger port to any outside connection. So no people were actually traveling to and from the port, or I guess the harbor. Sorry, the port's like the cargo port. But anyway, so we have that all hooked up. Those ships are transporting people now to and from our neighboring cities via the waterways. But yeah, here I decided to go for 2 tram lines here. So I wanted to have one that kind of circulated the downtown and that got people, kind of to and from the central station to the police station to like these, bigger residential areas. And then the second one, I wanted to be more of a direct line to the university campus. So I think that'll be a good spot to have the tram, so people can, if they have to leave the city or something to, visit, if they're from out of town or something like that, they can go to the central station, take the tram, and then go right to the hospital or to the campus there, to the university. So that's one of the big popular destinations. So the purpose of like having tram networks is, you're going to have less frequent stops. It's going to probably cover a longer area than say like a bus route. So I try to keep it, keep the number of stops pretty limited. This will go for any part of this episode. If you feel like I'm doing something that is just like, hey man, what the heck are you doing? This doesn't make any sense. This is totally like a wrong way to develop this transit route. Let me know. I have no idea really what I'm doing. And to be honest, public transit is not something that I always focus on in my builds. And I feel like I need to do a better job of that. I always, focus on kind of getting the city built out and then adding in public transit after the fact. And lately in City Skylines 2, I just haven't had a city get far enough along yet to where I even needed to really like implement any kind of public transit. And so, like I said, I kind of like to do it more at the end once I figure out, where the neighborhoods are, where the destinations are going to be, where those big like high traffic areas are going to be. And I kind of use it as a way to alleviate some of the traffic between certain areas, reduce the number of cars on the road. So this is no exception. As you can see, there's tons of traffic on that main sort of like highway that kind of comes through the middle of the city. So I need to find a way to deal with that. And that hopefully it'll get alleviated by some of these traffic fixes or some of these public transit additions. But I'm a little bit skeptical. I think that has to do a lot with the way that the map is designed. So this map, I don't know if I said this yet or not, but there's actually no outside connection other than a highway connection, because this map is like an island, I'm pretty sure. So they kind of had to hide like a highway connection via a tunnel. And so there's no rail connection. There's no like Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, there's no rail connection built into the outside of the map, so it makes it usually when I build my cities, the first thing that I'll do is I'll try to build a train station and get like a passenger rail connection to a couple of the outside cities, and that really helps alleviate a lot of the highway traffic that comes in. And so I can't do that in this map right now because there's not a like a rail line. I'd have to kind of build one and kind of hide it like in a tunnel under the water like they did with the highway. And right now I just don't really know how I'm going to do that. So that's why the harbor is important right now too, so that we can actually have a outside connection that's not just via the highway. So it's not just car traffic, right? And then another good addition would be an airport, which I haven't even thought about that at all yet, and if I would even put that in the city. But that's maybe for another time. I have no idea if I'm even gonna do one. But anyway, what we're doing here, we're starting to lay out some of the bus routes. So these bus routes, my goal here was to try to make a dedicated route to each of these kind of bigger neighborhoods. So, we have the bus terminal by the central station, and the passenger harbor actually has a built-in bus terminal as well. So my goal is to use the one by the central station to connect all of the bus routes to these neighborhoods. And then the one for the harbor is going to be sort of like the hub that will connect all the traffic from like the central station. You can go to that harbor via the bus, and then that'll connect some routes to the industry. And people forget about industrial bus routes. I feel like a lot of the time, I always think that, when I go in and I make a bus route, I'm like, oh, I got to connect all these residential and commercial areas, and go to the downtown, go to the train station, go to the hospital. Like you'll see here, I'll make a little connection to the hospital. But I often forget about industry, and it's important to have bus routes that go to those industrial complexes, because that's where people work. And if those people maybe only have one car or don't want to drive, parking is an issue, and they don't feel like making that type of commute if they want to take the bus and maybe save some money. I want to give people that option. So making sure that there's bus routes even to those areas where there aren't necessarily residences, but thinking that is a destination and people do need to get to and from there for their job. So you'll see here, we're jumping over to the industrial area now, just putting down some bus stops kind of where I want these lines to sit. And I am putting them kind of mainly on the main roads. I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing. I feel like there's not a ton of traffic in this area, so it's probably fine. I did sort of the same thing in the downtown. I kind of put some of the bus stops mainly on the main roads, just because I don't want to have buses driving around on the side streets. One, they're difficult to navigate for the buses because the buses are just, bigger vehicles. And two, I don't like them driving through residential neighborhoods because they're noisy. There's no reason that a bus should be driving down a side street. Typically you do see them just kind of on the main road. So I think this makes a lot of sense. At least I'd like to think so. But yeah, so here we go, starting to actually get the lines now. So bus routes, the game sort of wants you to build them in like a more of a loop. That's kind of how the game makes transit almost want to function at first. What I think is more realistic is a point-to-point system. So when you actually look at bus routes, they're very linear. They're not a loop. It's like a kind of on both sides of the street. It goes down one way, goes to its point, and then drives back. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do here, is make sure that these bus lines are actually lines and not loops, right? Otherwise I'd be calling it a bus loop. But anyway, so the stops are a bit more frequent than the tram. There are a lot of areas here, especially in the downtown, where I've used the location for the tram stop as the location for the bus stop, and just kind of put the bus stop just behind the tram stop, so it's not blocking the tram, or vice versa. And we'll see how that functions. I'm curious if I put down kind of enough lines here, but I think I kind of hit all the destinations. We have the Art Institute or museum or whatever it is. We have the central station, we have the police station, we have the city hall over there and everything. So there's a lot going on here, and I think that we've hit all of the major areas. And the nice thing about the scale of the city is that I don't need these crazy massive transit lines. I don't think we're going to have a metro. I don't think we need an elevated rail or anything like that. For now, I think this should be okay. If the city expands to a point, maybe like I said, after we're done with this initial 12-hour series. Maybe we can come back and expand the city a bit, and maybe we, depending on demand, maybe we will add in something like that. But just the scale of the city, I don't really think is that necessary at the moment. But yeah, we do end up having a lot of bus lines here. We actually end up filling out the terminal, and so if we do need to make some more, add in some more lines, we'll have to expand the bus terminal or like add in a second one. And yeah, I mean, it's fun to actually do this. I never, like I said, I never make transit a priority. So this is kind of cool to have a dedicated episode to actually sit and, make the time to build in a public transit network. And yeah, so now just doing a little bit of renaming here. I don't rename all of the lines, mainly because I'm not quite sure where, what the name of like some of the neighborhoods and little districts are going to be yet. So I was going to save that for kind of like a final, end of the series, just kind of do a city overview, name the districts, double check some city services. So I was going to save that as kind of like a good wrap up episode after we get done with the initial build. And then we'll go back and kind of name those lines accordingly, with the go into the neighborhoods that they, that all the respective destinations. But yeah, one thing that I actually was surprised about in this episode is how quickly I kind of put these lines together. And I don't think that I did think about where the stops are going to go, and where like there was a method behind this. I wasn't just placing down, transit lines like wherever just to get them placed down. I actually did think about where I wanted these routes to go. And it took a lot quicker than I thought it would. I thought I would actually be spending 2 episodes on this. But once I kind of put down the stops and got the lines established, it was pretty quick. And so now I'm just kind of lowering the number of vehicles on the lines, because I want to start small and then see, based on utilization. I'll come back in the next episode, and I think the first thing that I'll do is check utilization and see how, or actually maybe I'll give it time. Maybe I'll wait till the end of the next episode and just kind of spend the last 10 minutes of the build or something in the next episode looking at the transit routes and adding, adjusting the number of vehicles based on utilization and demand. So we'll spend some time with that. But I actually ended up here putting down a taxi depot as well. This is one asset that I know I've never placed in any of my cities. So it was really fun to be able to do that and add in some of these taxi stops, or whatever you want to call it, taxi stands, I guess. And again, just try to put them, very similar to where all of my little transit hubs are, like, where we have the tram, where we have the bus stops, like the central station, the art museum, the city hall, kind of downtown here. You figure these are going to be some more higher traffic areas with a more of a demand for public transit. So this will be a good place, or some good places to add those taxi stands in, and just another way for people to get around the city if they don't want to, ride the bus or take the tram or something like that. But yeah, can't complain about that. And now just adding in some more street trees. I love street trees. And so that's one thing that we're going to do, I think in the next episode as well, is kind of take a step back and do a little bit of detailing, kind of like the detailing part 1. We've built a lot. There are some areas that are still a bit empty. We kind of got some buildings down, but didn't really spend a lot of time, detailing anything. So I want to just put down some trees, put down some parks, pathways, if there's any kind of city service that we need, just spend an hour just kind of cleaning up some of these areas that we've left some gaps that we can just fill quickly and just kind of make the city feel more complete, make those neighborhoods feel more complete. And speaking of neighborhoods, I thought it's about time to build this one. I never really knew what I wanted to put here, and I ended up going with a bit of a mix between residential and commercial. So along this main road, I ended up putting some commercial, but I decided to make this kind of a medium density residential development. So we'll have some Southwest style buildings. We'll have the apartments. We'll have some row homes kind of up on the right here, where there's a little bit of a hill actually. And I think it turned out, I like the architecture and the style of buildings that end up spawning here. So I'm going to keep that. There are some parts that I was struggling with, like this part right here. I kind of didn't really know how to make this like the grid work. It was a little bit of an odd parcel of land, and I didn't really think that I needed any kind of city service here, like a school or anything. So I decided to just kind of use pathways to work out the zoning a bit better, and then that way we can put some commercial on that main road and have some better designed zones. But I think we're going to come back to this area just for a bit in the next episode. As I was rewatching this footage, I've had some additional ideas, that I wanted to rework a few areas here. So, and kind of add in, maybe like a little bit of a urban promenades block and some more pedestrian friendly streets. I kind of had some thoughts as I was going through, and maybe some ways to improve this area. So we'll come back to this, but I am happy that I had just something placed down here, because I was really struggling with, well, I wasn't struggling, but I just kind of ignored this area for a long time. And I didn't really know what I was going to put here. And, based on the fact that it's kind of by the hospital, I thought it would just be a good area for a nice new neighborhood. And I realized that I've used a lot of the northeast buildings in this city, and I wanted to add in some of the southwest ones, because at the end of the day, we have some palm trees. This is kind of a coastal build. I thought it would be cool to add some of those in here. And then one thing that I actually do end up doing is adding in like a nice bike path along this main road on the right here. You'll see me do it in a second. But yeah, I didn't really want to put commercial on that main avenue. I thought it would be kind of nice for people to just kind of drive along this hillside, not have a bunch of buildings and parking lots interfering with the traffic flow. It's just a quick way to get off the highway, and then you can go right to the hospital and just have a really quick, easy drive without a ton of interruption. So that's why I just added this bike path in here, so people can actually take their bike kind of along the road here. We'll add in some trees. It looks really nice, and I'm happy with how this turned out for now. Again, not the best detailing work I've ever done. Maybe not the best use of the space. We can always come back to it later if we want to, but at least we have something there that serves some kind of purpose. And speaking of trees, the new patch allows you to put your trees closer together, which I think is really, really awesome. It wasn't something that I thought that I was kind of unhappy with, but it did bug me when I would try to put some trees down, and it would just be like I couldn't get them close enough. Even when I tried to make these like dense forest areas, they never felt really dense at all. And it's just like when I filled in this little area here by this bike trail with the trees, I was so happy that you could put the trees as close together as you can now. And it just was something, that I didn't think I would enjoy so much, to be honest. I was very pleasantly surprised. And it just makes the area feel really, there's just a lot more nature, and it just feels really like it just looks better. I don't know. I like it a lot. I'm really happy that they added that change. And that'll be great in the future when we can, fill in some of these forestry areas and areas around the city to just make it look more green, more lush. It'll be awesome. So really excited for that. But one thing that I really want to come back and detail up is the university campus. That's going to be a priority in the next episode. I'm going to spend a little bit of time there and kind of filling that in with some pathways, with some trees. Nothing crazy, but right now it just looks so incomplete and just so empty. And I really just adding in that little bit of detail, I think will make it look so much better. And we'll add in some parks, maybe, things like that. I'm really excited to do that because it needs it very, very badly. But yeah, already you could see just this neighborhood kind of coming together. Didn't take much time at all. It took, maybe like 20 minutes or so to build this out. And again, I'm not completely disappointed with it. I think it's a good use of the space. It makes sense. And then one thing that I also realized that I needed to add that I haven't done yet is there's on the other side of the map, or on the other side of the city where we have those other neighborhoods kind of off to the right, if you're looking at it now, towards like the top of the city by like the farmland and stuff. There's an avenue where I need a highway connection. And I realized that a big reason why there's probably a ton of traffic right here in this area is because I don't have that highway connection there. And I need another way for people to get into the city other than coming in through this highway and then coming in through that big bridge that goes into the downtown. There's really no other way to get into the city. So I'll go in, I'll fix that. I think that'll make a big difference in the traffic. I say that, fingers crossed, right? Who knows? But it might even make things worse, but who knows? And then one thing that I got to do too is I'm realizing like some of the lane math in some of these areas is a bit whack. It's not it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, I don't want parking on this little avenue here coming off of this roundabout. I want to make that a 6-lane road. I think that makes way more sense. Same thing going into that neighborhood up there. There's parking on that road. I think it's just really bottlenecking that area. So I gotta reevaluate the lane math. I could be wrong, but I think I just need to take a look at it. I kind of never really came back to that after I built it. And yeah, just thinking of some additional city services here. You know, we have the police stations, we have fire stations. I mean, I don't think we need a police station here. I was trying to see if I could put one anyway, but because I feel like we just don't have a ton of police coverage, but we do have that big headquarters building, so I guess we don't really need it. But I did put down a fire station. I think that was something that, you know, every neighborhood, I think it makes sense to have a dedicated fire department for every neighborhood. So I do need to go back and kind of reevaluate where those buildings are and if I need to move any of them or add in some more, because I feel like our fire coverage is not great. And I know that there's not a ton of fires in the game, at least that I see. But when, you know, you do get a fire, it really helps to have those fire departments close by, because you know, if it takes them a while to get across the city, then you run the risk of like tons of buildings burning down and everything like that. So I want to make sure that your response time is pretty quick, and especially given the mechanic that people don't pull over for emergency vehicles in this game, you want to make sure that there are you know, a variety and a good number of stations in your city. But yeah, here, filling in this corner, I decided to put a little park here. Maybe not the best place for a playground right under the highway, but you know what? You know, you have like skate parks and basketball courts and things like that in spaces like this. So I think it, you know, it makes sense to kind of do something like that here, like a cool little, you know, more urbanized type of park. I think it fits well. But yeah, like I said, here, adding in some trees, this is where you can start to see how it's cool to how close they can get. I think it just looks a lot better. But with that being said, we are approaching the end of this episode. So thank you guys so much for watching. It was a little bit unexpected building this second neighborhood, or this, you know, whole neighborhood here in addition to the public transit. But in the next episode, we're going to do some detailing, filling in some gaps, and evaluating some of the public transit lines to make sure that everything is a bit more balanced. So in the meantime, have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Peace out.